Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and this evening we warmly welcome the family of Chief Petty Officer Shipwright Harry Edgar Lillywhite, whose story will be told shortly by Wing Commander Aaron Fryer from the Royal Australian Air Force, who is a member of Chief Petty Officer Shipwright Lillywhite's family. 82 years ago today, on the 19th of November 1941, HMAS Sydney was lost with all hands following a close quarters engagement with the German raider HSK Cormoran. Sydney had been celebrated for her successful battles in the Mediterranean, where she famously sunk the Italian cruiser Bartolomeo Colleoni. Returning to Australia in February 1941, Sydney and her crew received a hero's welcome. On completion of a brief period at home that included a change of command, Sydney was tasked with escorting troop ships to the Southeast Asia via the Indian Ocean route along the coast of Western Australia. It was during the return passage of one of these that Sydney encountered the Cormoran. Disguised as a Dutch merchant vessel, Cormoran used deception to gain an advantage by closing the range between the two ships and allowing her to bring all her armament to bear. The initial salvos were telling and contributed to the loss of Sydney with its full war complement of 645 men. This remains Australia's worst naval disaster. HSK Cormoran was also sunk in the engagement. 317 of its crew of 397 were rescued. For almost 7 decades, the final resting place of Sydney and her crew remained unknown. The fate of Sydney became one of Australia's greatest wartime mysteries, a source of great controversy and many conspiracy theories. In 2008, the wreckage of Sydney and Cormoran were found off the coast of Western Australia, about 22 kilometres apart. A commission of inquiry was held by the Department of Defence. A later expedition in 2015 documented the wreck sites and revealed more about the last moments of the ship. This evening, we remember HMAS Sydney and pay our respects to the crew commemorated here on the Roll of Honour. We warmly welcome Mr. John Quick, President of the HMAS Sydney Association ACT, and Mr. Dennis Lyons, representing the Naval Association of Australia. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Return Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Club Association. We welcome members who are watching the ceremony broadcast across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. Australia's Federation Guard is the tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catapult party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. Thank you. You may be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Chief Petty Officer Shipwright Harry Edgar Lillywhite. Harry Lillywhite was born on the 11th of April 1899 in the coastal town of Portsmouth, England. Known as Pete, he was one of 4 children born to Thomas and Kate Lillywhite. The Navy was part of Pete's life from an early age. His father worked as an officer's steward in the Royal Navy, and Pete received his education at the Royal Hospital School in Greenwich, where students were educated in the Navy tradition. Pete joined the Royal Navy when he was 14 years old, learned various trades, and specialised as a shipwright. In October 1919, he married his sweetheart, Ellen Rowe, and a daughter, Cassie, was born to the couple in the early 1920. 4 years later, Lillywhite transferred to the Royal Australian Navy and relocated to Sydney with his family. Over the following years, he served as a shipwright at bases across Australia before being posted to HMAS Canberra for a period of 3 years. He left the Navy in 1936 and took up a position at an insurance company in Melbourne, where he was working when the Second World War broke out in 1939. With decades of experience, Lillywhite offered his services and rejoined the Royal Australian Navy in 1940. He was posted to the naval base HMAS Sydney as a member of the Fleet Reserve before being posted to the light cruiser HMAS Sydney as Shipwright First Class on the 16th of October. The ship, which had been engaged in operations in the Mediterranean, was recalled to Australia in January 1941, at which point Lillywhite was able to join the crew. In February, he was aboard when the cruiser sailed from Sydney to Fremantle to undertake routine convoy escort duties off the coast of Western Australia. Over the following months, Sydney continued her patrol and escort work on the Australia Station, escorting troop ships such as Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth in southern Australian waters throughout early September. In late September 1941, Sydney began escorting convoys from Fremantle to the Sunda Strait in the Netherlands East Indies. Arriving at Sunda Strait, Sydney would hand the convoy over to other Allied warships, which would then continue escorting the ships to Singapore. On the 11th of November 1941, Sydney steamed from Fremantle, escorting the troop ship Zealandia, carrying troops of the Australian 8th Division. 6 days later, Sydney handed the troop ship escort over to HMS Durban before starting the return passage to Fremantle. On the afternoon of the 19th of November 1941, Sydney sighted what appeared to be a merchant ship some 200 kilometres west of Shark Bay, Western Australia, and closed to investigate. Sydney signalled the ship to identify itself while continuing to close with the mysterious vessel. The ship replied that it was the Dutch steamer Strat Malacca, but in fact she was the heavily armed German merchant raider Cormoran in disguise. Cormoran had already sunk 10 unsuspecting merchant ships in the Indian Ocean and taken another as a prize. Sydney drew closer, relinquishing her advantage to superior gunnery and range, demanding that the ship identify itself with its allotted secret call sign. The captain of the German raider, Theodor Detmers, did not have the response, and with Sydney at about 900 yards on his starboard beam, or point-blank range for naval gunnery, he ordered the immediate hoisting of the German battle ensign and opened fire. In the battle that followed, both ships were badly damaged. Sydney, torpedoed and ablaze, sank during the early hours of the 20th of November 1941, with the loss of all 645 members on board, including Chief Petty Officer Shipwright Pete Lillywhite. The crew of the Cormoran abandoned ship before the raider was scuttled. Approximately 3/4 of her crew survived to become prisoners of war. With no grave but the sea, Lillywhite and his comrades are commemorated on the Naval Memorial in Plymouth, England, among thousands of others who have no known grave. He was 40 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left amongst almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Chief Petty Officer Shipwright Harry Edgar Lillywhite, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They have no grave but the cruel sea, no flowers lay at their head. A rusting hulk is their tombstone, a fast on the ocean bed. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember them. Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub of Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.